Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and your guide along the way. And we are about to take another sojourn along the explorative way of origins of showmanship. Are the origins of showmanship to be found within play? Is there a deep link between showmanship and play? Yes, there is. Have we already talked about it at great length? Yes, we have. And what did we talk about the last time we talked about this? Well, we did talk about juvenilization. We talked about how through neoteny, we have features of the children, the features of childhood baked into us and still very much alive, and if not alive in each and every one of us adults, it is something that potentially can be unleashed. And in the next few episodes, we're going to look at serious play. Can we look at play in a way that it's not just being belittled? And we're going to look at a few different aspects of this. We're going to look at whether we can actually play for a living, and what does that mean. We're going to look at who decides what it is that is serious, because play is not serious, and we're going to look at a whole bunch of things going forward. And last time we did also then talk about our inner child as a real being that we have inside ourselves, and thinking of it as that might not just be a sort of self-help kind of thing, but actually be a little compass that we can carry within us. Picturing a particular child, as I did in the last one, or last episode, or we can picture any child and picture what would the child do. So, because that was the kind of question that we asked in the last time, and that questions that should be asked by adults to children is not when will you become like me, when will you grow up and become serious, but how did I ever lose the ability to be like you? And adding the crucial next question, how can I awake you in me again? So with that in mind, let's look at the kind of play that adults then, such as yourself and myself, might engage in. And that is, of course, not just play, that's serious play. So we're going to start today by a little quote by the ever wonderful Fred Rogers, aka Mr. Rogers. And if you don't know who Mr. Rogers is, you should go on YouTube, pause this thing, and look at him trying to convince some politician or something in America of getting money for his TV show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Wonderful, wonderful man. And he is quoted as saying, play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Go, Mr. Rogers. He knew where I was at. And so we're going to talk about the serious play. And of course, there's a little bit, like, it almost sounds oxymoronic that it's, play isn't serious by its nature, yet there is serious aspects to it. So in 1938, a man called Johan Huizinga published a book called Homo Ludens. And that's one of the first scholarly works to take play seriously. Not the first, but it's one of the first, and an important book. The title is, as you might imagine, is a combination of homo, which is our genus, and ludens, which means player. So man the player, or human the player. Huizinga is playfully, or maybe not, redefining us not as a homo sapiens, the wise human, but as Homo Ludens, thereby highlighting our powerful propensity for play as our most salient feature. This was, at the time, quite a radical notion, although if you have been buying into my story and the slant on play, then the fact that we are a playful species, and that might even be our most powerful propensity, that then if you followed us along this far, then this won't be so hard to swallow. The book Homo Ludens has been highly influential, and its ideas continue to illuminate and stimulate the ongoing serious exploration of play, which is of course what's being done by adults. We are just studying play, and the kids are playing it, and it's so easy for them. So easy to be a kid. Wow. Maybe not always, but anyway. I use the word serious here because of Huizinga's use of this word serious in describing play. And I'm quoting here: "Play is a free activity standing quite consciously outside of ordinary life, as being not serious, but at the same time absorbing the player intensely and utterly." By this, Huizinga does not mean that play is inherently frivolous. He is rather pointing out that the experience that we call play stands outside the pressures and rules of everyday life. As Huizinga says, quote, "Play is not ordinary or the same as real life. Children playing knows this. They do not confuse what's in the game and with what's part of everyday life. They know they are only pretending." End quote. But the quote continues, "Nevertheless, as we have already pointed out, the consciousness of play being only pretend does not by any means prevent it from proceeding with an utmost seriousness, with an absorption that passes into rapture and temporarily at least completely abolishes the only feeling that it's only play." End quote. End quote, just before I repeated that. So, although play isn't serious, he, Huizinga, at the fear of repeating himself, says, going on in the same text, quote, "We must emphasize once again that play does not exclude seriousness." End quote. So he, and this, now I can't quite remember, I believe this is in the opening chapter after the introduction, and when he digs into it and he talks about play, he is making this as one of his key points. We must emphasize once again that play does not exclude seriousness. And this mirrors, of course, the ongoing project of giving showmanship and performance, which is our overarching goal on the way of the showman, a value in and of itself. When we hear that circus or juggling or magic is just entertainment, or it's just a bit of fun, then just is a central indicator of low value. Oh, we don't have to pay attention to this. It's mere entertainment. Don't take it seriously. Don't worry about it. We can. It happens, but don't worry about it. So our chosen medium of performance, of entertainment, of circus and magic and even theater to some extent, sit on the entertainment end of the performance culture spectrum. And this, we do have all of these chosen mediums has the same ability to completely capture and absorb the spectator to such a degree that the feeling can be described as rapture. And anecdotally, I see this in an audience reactions to shows that I am in, and to myself and to my colleagues, the acts that they do. The sheer explosions of joy or pent-up energy from a well-crafted act is a common, this sort of rapture is a common reaction, to the point that it could be described as a feature inherent to circus acts. The visceral, ecstatic nature of an absolutely hilarious act, or a dangerous high wire or trapeze act, quoting Huizinga, completely abolishes the only pretending feeling. End quote. If it ever was there in the first place amongst a circus audience. But it's like we are doing serious play and the audience are participating in it in a way that I remember I was working with Flick Flack, this German circus, and there was a high wire act there, and I was on just after them, so I ended up watching the act for the entirety of that Christmas season. It's like 21 shows or whatever, and it never stopped because it was high. I don't know how high it was, but it was a very high tent, so maybe 10, 12 meters up in the air, and seeing those guys, Moroccan guys, walking on that wire every night. It increased my heart rate and made my palms sweaty. So in a way, it's playing what they were doing, and leaping and jumping and all that. But it was serious as all that. So here comes the question. You can't be serious. Is this your real job? So when I perform, this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, but when I perform my act where I squeeze through 2 tennis rackets, it does look like I'm playing. It's so silly, chaotic and fun that while it happens, it's indistinguishable from playing, happenstance, or just fooling around. To the average spectator, it can look trivial. Yet, the experience seems to reliably beg a certain question. And it begs many questions. One could say that the summary image left in a spectator's mind could even be said to be a question mark. What was that? If I flatter myself, perhaps it could even be a mystery that's left in them. One of the questions, anyway, that reliably arises goes along the lines of, is this what you do for a living? The experience is of such novelty that most spectators don't really know how to approach a dialogue about it. But when they express the conundrum in relation to work, do you have another job, or is this your real job? I believe that the inner, mostly subconscious dialogue prompting that particular question goes something like this. That was fun, not serious. Serious things have value. Silly things are distractions. They're fun, but inconsequential. We create value when we do serious work. He's just playing. So how can this be his work? How does this create the value enough so that he can make a living from it? So these little leaps of logic are quite straightforward. Like, he's having fun, which means he's playing. Play is not serious, but work is serious, so he's not working. Therefore, squeezing yourself through 2 tennis rackets can't be his real job, prompting the question, is this what you do for a living? From analyzing this often asked question, I believe that we find 2 misconceptions. A deep misunderstanding concerning play versus seriousness, as well as an unfortunate misconception about work. Unfortunately, for those of us who see something much deeper in play and performance, both these misconceptions are extremely common, to the point of being universal. So here we find ourselves right at the heart of Huizinga's ambiguity around the term serious, which will be our focus for at some length in this chapter. We'll go a few different paths, but then we'll really delve into seriousness. First, we will look at seriousness and its relation to play, and then we'll look at play and its relation to work. Because starting out, child's play is serious. We've already driven that home with multiple quotes from Huizinga and through the previous 10, 15 episodes. If I walk in on my daughter and her friend playing in her room, the desk, bed, and half the floor is filled with small mice, toy cars, a caravan, potted plants, sticks, gems, and carefully sculpted mountains made from pillows and doonas. And if I ask them when I walk in on them and say, what are you doing? Most often they say, just, we're playing. Sometimes they might sketch out and explain some aspect of the game, pointing to the doona and a pile of pillows that they might tell me, oh, this is the mountain they have to drive across with a caravan to get to the sea, which is the bed there, and then this is the dragon that's called Midnight. So they think he's evil, but which is actually their friend. But I never actually, when I ask them, oh, what are you doing? They don't say, oh, we're just having some fun. Or we're just doing something that has no meaning and just filling time so that we won't get bored. Or we're killing time until we do something serious. To them, the play is always meaningful in and of itself. It is a carefully crafted and co-created additional reality. I say co-created, and I would say that even when my daughter is playing alone, there is still an element of co-creation in her relationship with the things that she imports and introduces into the game. And even the ongoing history of these particular mice that she has had for a long time, that has names and histories and previous games, and the reality of those games can be brought in at any time. So that's this co-creation of the stories from before. And the random shape of a Duna that's thrown off the bed might become a giant snail shell or a mountain or a turtle based on the particular shape that it has. It's a reciprocal thing with the environment because it participates as an inspiration for the game and the world building. But of course, when 2 or more children are playing, then we are talking about a very direct, intentional co-creation, filled with negotiation. The game activity is voluntary and it gives both of the players joy. So to my daughter and her friends, child's play is not something supplementary, some sort of added extra or an interruption in their lives. It is life itself. To them, play is an absorbing and essential aspect of their everyday relation to the world. So, of course, they won't tell me that they're killing time waiting for real life to resume. Rather, to the contrary, they're making it clear in no uncertain terms that I'm interrupting something which is important to them. They clearly don't want to be disturbed and want to get back to the game, but I am keeping them from that. In short, they're reacting exactly how I react to them when I am working and I am interrupted. "What are you doing?" she asks. "I'm writing," I say, hoping she will leave me alone, as her interruption is threatening to ruin my writing flow. Just like we adults have a flow when we are getting stuff done, children have a flow when they play. In this sense, play seems to share a certain kinship with work, which I will get back to. When my daughter plays, she is in a deep flow state, and the situations arising from the games are rarely so random that I can't make out the meaning in the almost dreamlike logic of the Fast and Furious game. Like when she plays with a little mouse Molly, who always has to leave the other toy friends behind and go back to her caravan because her family has to go away to another town, where Molly again, for a short stolen time, can get to play with another group of soft toy characters before the family ventures on again to a new town. That might be something a whole lot deeper than this facile surface of what it appears like on the surface. My daughter might be processing an aspect of her life which is outside of her control. And the consequence of my vocation is impacting on her. Being a touring showman, it takes her away from her friends, be they new or old, at irregular intervals that she has no influence over. As we saw from the dark example of many episodes ago of children playing in concentration camps, play is not a luxury. In some similarly dark experiments, primates, rats and mice were deprived of the opportunity to play, and the results were all negative. Primates and rodents alike reliably suffered long-term negative consequences such as increased anxiety, stress and aggressiveness. Much like what we see in play-deprived children. When 4-week-old rats were inhibited from playing with other rat children of a similar age, the result was, across the board, a loss of sensitivity to other rats. As adults, the play-deprived rats had trouble interpreting the social signals of the other rats. They got into conflict and acted with aggression in situations where other rats would easily have gotten along. Bringing the evolutionary point of view back in, the result of not being able to get along or understand the social situations meant that the play-deprived rats had more problems in getting to reproduce. Maladapted individuals, also among rats, haven't got the same opportunities to find a mate. And this is then one example of just how play directly affects evolution and who we are and who we have become, who our species is. So, little digression there, but returning to my daughter and her mouse Molly, who in the game constantly has to move from one town to the next, we can, without much imagination, see what aspect of reality is mirrored in that particular game. When we make this connection, We also see how play is an important part of her processing of her environment and herself as an individual, and the way these two come into contact. In this way, I believe that we can say that play is how a child thinks. Play is how a child processes the world, herself and her place in it. Yet when I say play is thinking, this does not adequately capture the depth of the play process, because play is a full spectrum thinking, a full spectrum processing. Play is not just an intellectual process, it is also deeply emotional. A child feels genuine emotions and conjures up real feelings as the little mouse goes through her trials and tribulations. And it is also deeply intertwined with her will. What a child wants, that they indeed have a will of their own, and that this is something worthy of taking serious, is not so commonly expressed, yet I believe it to be true. We have spoken at length about how play is self-motivated, and this motivation, which comes from inside the child, is an expression of, and for the child, the experience of their own will. Or as we've put it earlier, the child's true will, what will place them into a relationship with the world which will make them feel fulfilled, happy, that they belong, and that they're doing the right thing for them. That's what the true will is, and it's not so easy. It's easy to not hear the whispers and the guidance that it gives us. What do we actually want? What do you want? And I don't mean that each individual game that my daughter or any child or any adult, whatever, does, particularly children, that it's pointing towards some predestined goal which the child has some subconscious knowledge of. I'm merely saying that in the moment of play, the child's true will is what she's doing in that particular game, in that particular moment. And in this way, we find the third aspect of human experience. When your thoughts and your emotions are mixed together, then we find the full spectrum thinking process of play. So when we then look at a quote from Friedrich Schiller, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, that because we've talked about it before. I can't remember which episode that was in, but we've talked about this before. But he says, we're only human in the fullest sense of the word when we play. Or we're only fully human when we play. Powerful statement right there, Mr. Schiller. When we hear that, then it gets a deeper resonance when we see play as a full spectrum thinking or full spectrum engagement with the world and immediate environment. It's an imaginal process and a multidimensional process of fitting into. You're fitting ourselves into the world. And we participate in the world with our thinking and our feeling, and we're guided by our inner emotions, and which is an expression of our own will. So when we solve math problems, we engage our thinking. When we hear a sad song, we engage emotionally. And when we eat because we are hungry, we're in a limited way exercising our will. But when we play, we are in a unique human situation, engaging all these faculties upon the task at hand. A task which most often is a creation from our own imagination, not in a simple collage kind of way, what Samuel Taylor Coleridge termed fancy, which is just connecting random concepts and images, but rather a deeply imaginative and in the most valuable and true sense that we have of connecting to the world. The way all our sense impressions, our likes and dislikes, our thoughts and feelings all come together in our souls to give us, human beings, the picture of the world as it appears for us. In this relaxed field, first offered to us through the love of those who cared so deeply for us as to protect us from the hardships of biological necessity, in this room, if you will, created by love, this area of interest, a human child can exercise her full capacity as a human being to participate and full spectrum think herself into the world in full freedom. Now, if this epic argument of the seriousness of play seems a little out of proportion for you, then let's take a more down-to-earth example from sports. Let's imagine that in the midst of a European Championship League soccer game, one of the players grabbed a soccer ball with his hands and just ran past the shocked football players and threw it into the goal, and then went into one of those hilarious celebration ritual things. And then when he is politely queried by his teammates of why are you doing this, and if his response was, it's just a game we're playing, it's not that serious, I just threw it in, we get one goal, hey, it's fun times. And as soon as we picture this, then the seriousness of play becomes as plain to see as a fire truck on a football field. The passion of soccer fans, whose full spectrum participation in the ups and downs of their respective soccer teams is as real as the ups and downs of their own lives, would likely invade the field unless halted by security, murder the player who dared destroy the game. In light of all this, I believe it's true to say that in this sense, playing is perhaps the most serious human undertaking. It's instead an undertaking which has the same kind of serious qualities which we find in sacred rituals and in our greatest works of art. Most serious human undertaking, huh? So that was focusing quite a bit on my daughter, all of her toy mice and children playing. So let's look a little bit more at adult play. As we've touched on play, it is just difficult to define. You know, it's a complex thing. That's why I'm talking for so long. And one of the reasons for this is that play is so very different for the different age groups. Play is the natural state of being for a child, whilst it's not as easy for adults to enter the play state. But play has many faces, and practically anything could be done playfully. A game of underwater rugby can be play, but it can also be deadly serious, as it was when I played in a tournament. I played underwater rugby as a kid, as a youth. So sometimes running is play. Sometimes it's just a particular brand of torture that one undergoes in physical education at school, and we adults have an opportunity to cultivate play. But unlike children, for whom it's a default approach, it most commonly have to be a conscious effort for adults. So when adults are going to play, it's something which has to be organized. We arrange weekends away parties or book tickets to music festivals to get away from their serious daily chores and obligations. After all, adult lives are already filled to the brim with adult activities such as work and all the minutiae of being a citizen in a country, a parent, a partner, an employee, a gardener, or whatever else. There's also something that has to be done, and on the rare occasion, there's not also, there's always something that has to be done, you know. There's also something that has to be done, and then there's always something that has to be done. It's just, shit just happens, and we gotta deal with it. And on the rare occasion that the relentlessness of everyday life ceases, we just want to lie down or let someone entertain us, usually in the form of a movie or a TV show. So to play for an adult means to put their everyday life on hold. It is something other than life. It is an exception to the normal state of being. And this confusion here, or no, not confusion, this distinction between what play is for a child and what play is for adults is part of why we say, now you have to do something serious to your child, I think. But anyway, it's also implicit in this deviation from us, or this distinction, not deviation, that play isn't serious. It's something that we do for fun. It's not really necessary, but good to do if one can find the time. And in this sense, adult play is synonymous with leisure. Leisure means, time spent for enjoyment, when you look at it in the dictionary. And leisure, you'd be probably worried if your grown child who's moved away to study spent most of their time at leisure. This exceptionalism of the state of leisure is found in its etymology. It comes from the Latin licere, which I believe is the perfect translation and pronunciation there, and which means to be allowed. Licere, to be allowed. And as adults, we are apparently our own masters, and thus can grant ourselves to be allowed to play, but only occasionally. Adults need to be allowed to take time for enjoyment. This means that each society has its own sanctioned events where we are allowed to enjoy ourselves. And one such time is festival time, carnival time. And I mentioned music festivals before, but there are of course all kinds of festivals, from mime festivals and dance festivals to religious festivals and carnivals. And during Mardi Gras in New Orleans, the carnival in Rio de Janeiro, or the kind where there is a midway with carousels and roller coasters and shows, they are times, these events are times and sanctioned places also where the rules for life are altered and the whole focus of reality changes. A festival is an extraordinary event. We find festivals all over the world, religious and secular and national and international, and in one sense or another, festivals are times that engages, entertains, and inspires people. Most communities regard festivals as highly important and valuable moments of their collective life, whether purely secular, like at a music festival or beer festival, or religiously, like during Christmas, Ramadan, or Vesak, which is Buddha's birth, death, and enlightenment celebration. They celebrate all on one day. So the word festival has, as does many, Latin roots, and it means feast, and food and drink in abundance is a staple part of most festivals. So much of our everyday life is spent working, and each of us as whatever our individual vocations are. And in this way, work separates us and divides us up by essentially being about our individual differences in terms of skill, inclinations, and socioeconomic status or whatever. Festivals, on the other hand, is a time for connection and coming together. Whether those who come together are the family, as in certain holidays, or the whole community in active participation at others. One of the main features of festival time is that we are and that we do together. We are together and we do together. Play, of course, is the flavor of behavior, which most reliably connects us to each other. Thus, we see festival time as essentially playful. So we've now kind of, in some of the little summary that I did on top, I almost ventured into this prematurely, but there is this, the child's relationship to play is, if you don't let them play, they get sick. And for us as adults, if we don't get to do our work or, engage in that, then we can also get sick, depressed, and whatever, if you take away the thing that gives purpose to your life. So, but a lot of the time what we adults do is classified or called work, and it's called play in children. So let's look at this work-play distinction. So I don't know if they're actually on a binary thing, but let's look at it anyway, work and play. So my mother, she was a kindergarten teacher in a Steiner kindergarten or a Waldorf kindergarten. And she used to say, play is the child's work. Play is the child's work. And this became one of those foundation stone truths that I've kept returning to throughout my life. And I can't remember exactly when she said it, and I guess it wasn't a one-time thing, but rather something that came up time and time again, like a shorthand for her attitude towards seriousness and the importance of play as a phenomena. And I was interested in play already then, which was before finishing school and moving out of home. Why? Well, I think that at least in part of why I'm so obsessed with it is that what I filled most of my time with, which at the time was juggling. I was completely obsessed by juggling, which followed hot on the trot in a kind of crossfade from years of being just as fervently obsessed by magic, all the while being obsessed about performance, since this was the thing which seemed to give my obsessions meaning, beyond the purely selfish pleasures that I derived from just pursuing them. Because when I practiced something, then it gave it meaning as I showed it to someone. And as it turns out, this phrase, play is the child's work, when you Google it and look around a little bit, it did not originate with my mother. Though from her convictions to its truth in all its facets and complexity, it might as well have been hers. As far as I can find, I think it might be first put into writing by the famous child psychologist Jean Piaget in his book Play, Dreams and Imitation in Childhood from 1951, where he writes, "Play is the work of children." But I think it's one of those insights that's been had by many. From what we see in how my daughter and her friend felt like when I interrupted them, going, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And how this was just like my reaction when I was interrupted whilst doing some writing work, then we saw that there is absolutely something connecting play and work in the attitude towards it, the seriousness. But as we've just looked at, play for a child versus play for an adult is quite different. So when we then look at work for the two, the child's work, play, and the adult's work, work, then we should expect there to be some differences. And as we have already explored, children take play seriously. We nailed that down with Huizinga's ideas from Homo Ludens there. So there is then no real contradiction between the fact that when adults get serious, they go to work, and that when children get serious, they go to play. Both are then serious activities. Yet, from this, it's clear that the difference does not lie in whether it is serious or not, but rather it might be in what is meant by work. So, the first definition of work that comes up in the Google dictionary immediately sets it apart from play, because work is defined by its purposefulness. So work is an activity, it says, that's the actual definition of it in Google dictionary. Work is an activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. Work is done for many reasons. That's the end of the quote. Work is done for many reasons, and a very important one is money. And this need for money to provide us, for us and those who depend on us, that's super important. And work is very much utilitarian, and for most people, this is the main function of work, not self-motivation and enjoyment. Play, on the other hand, is valuable and offers important benefits, but none of those are the reasons that kids play, or adults for that matter. The purpose of play is to play, and the purpose of work is not done for its own sake. The purposes of works are many. Any kind of work that you do, there's many things like making money, fixing the roof, or making food for a party. Or the more concrete the purpose of an activity is, the less likely it is that it is play. So that's kind of an interesting, or maybe then actually like a bit of an unusual way to look at what the difference is between play and work. Is it so that if it doesn't have any direct purpose in that moment, that it actually, then it is work? I don't know. So what is the task of a child's work? Now, the project of childhood is about understanding the world, how the laws of physics work, what's food, what's dangerous, and so forth. And on top of that, a child needs to understand themselves, a project which never completely finishes. But that's particularly important and pivotal in the early years. The third aspect is the fitting of the child into their immediate environment and the world at large. If we say that these are the pillars of a child's task, then play is the work which gets that done. The work of the child is to know oneself and to find one's place and passion. And in a certain sense, the adult work is then the next step on that path, the fulfillment of the knowledge gained in childhood, in finding yourself and your role and whatever. What's expected from the play of children is a feeling of purpose, satisfaction, and meaning. And this is desired from adult work too, even if it's not always expected. Like it's good. It's good if your work makes you happy. A child feels fulfilled when engaged in play, and an adult finds that kind of fulfillment through work, or at least they should strive for that. It's now interesting to note that enjoyment is baked into the very nature of play, but it isn't really baked into the nature of work. For me, though, working on ideas for shows, practicing riding a mini bicycle or throwing a hat up onto a stick balanced on my chin makes me feel good. Makes me feel like I'm doing something which is meaningful. It's meaningful to me, although I do recognize that these activities aren't particularly useful or meaningful as one commonly thinks of such things. To me it's meaningful because it's my profession to present unusual acts. This is a reason that's understandable for most people. Of course it's meaningful for you. It relates to your work. That makes it meaningful, since work is considered a meaningful activity. Work is a practical, money-making, sensible activity, but as it happens for me, it is also my passion and my vocation. It's what I will engage in when I can manage to find some time. Some might say, as I have gone on about many times, that what I do for a living is so close to playing or make-believe or just frivolously doing stuff that people can't tell that I'm working when I'm at work. And it's also this what I do, it's also what I engage in if I'm not working, i.e. doing shows somewhere, then I'm preparing it or thinking about it, recording this episode for you to hear. So here we get to the misconception now finally, if we had two misconceptions about work that we brought up at the beginning of the chapter. And that is on the nature of work, because this misconception is that because there's a strong tendency in the world to think of work as not being fun. So many people work in jobs with lots of repetition in places like factories, Amazon warehouses, or on computers in offices. The work is quite far from the things that the workers do in their own time. Very few Amazon workers or supermarket cashiers go home and do anything resembling their work to relax or to enjoy themselves. For all those people who don't do that, the experience is that if you're really enjoying it, it isn't work. Work is something other than fun. Might even go so far as to say that work is boring, per definition. Some people might find a certain solace in work, a machine-like meditative experience in their repetitive behavior, but I do not think that this is the default experience. There's a whole lot of people who doesn't love the work they do, and they might be corporate lawyers, mainly working on spreadsheets and reports that no one will read, but which needs to exist, just for a law case to continue. They might be working as a checkout clerk in a supermarket. But I believe with David Graeber, from his excellent essay on the phenomena of bullshit jobs, which is an excellent read, that a lot of those who are unhappy with their work, so much so that they themselves think that their job is unnecessary. These people works within the category of administration. There's a whole bunch of admin necessary to be a showman: taxes, emails, tickets and accommodation, bookings, cancellations, insurance requirements, to name a few. Come to think of it, I could do with an administrator. Well, actually, I'd come to think of it, I have the best administrator in my life, my wife. She does what I have such difficulty doing with great ease and extraordinary perfection. But anyway, for those who work a job that they don't love, I hope circumstances improves for them all. A lot of people are working on, working one or sometimes more than one job to provide for their families, and such is life, and we do what we have to. And if you aren't working for the pleasure of working, then I hope you're making money or getting prestige or making your family proud of you. If not, then you should take Alan Watts' challenge and ask yourself, what would you do if money were no object? And that thought, as we continue on in the next episode. We're going to look at what does Alan Watts mean when he says, what would you do if money were no object? We're going to talk about that and what adults do and can do to play for a living next time. As I'm sharing with you all these thoughts that I have about play, I am sometimes struck with how much I actually say, yet how much I feel like I'm not getting to the point or whatever. I mean, the point is, of course, the journey. It is the exploration. It's not that I have a very specific point that I could just go, or instead of having done all of these episodes, I could have just said, work is play, play is work, or whatever, some sort of aphorism or whatever. So what I hope that all of this is doing is that it is just something that you might have on as you're doing the dishes or whatever, and that these ideas of thoughts will just sort of permeate into you and once and for all just show you in a very elaborate way that whatever it is that you grab onto and start to explore, what you can find that's related to it and what it is enormous, possibly endless. So now that we are looking at play, and we spent whole season 2 looking at showmanship, and we are now having a good picture of the many potential aspects and the many eventualities of showmanship, what it is as a thing in the world, and now we're looking at what play is. And then I hope that these two are continuously going and making little bells ring. So when I'm talking about playing, I'm talking about showmanship, and when I'm talking about showmanship, we are talking about playing and all this. So I hope that this is cooking and connecting in you. And if you have it in you to do me a solid, to do me a favor, then next time there's an episode that comes out here, then I would love for you to just share that on your social media. Or maybe even better, find your favorite episodes of the Way of the Showman and share that. Say, this is the episode that got me interested, or whatever. And if you do that, I'll be very happy. So that's all I'm going to say today. So until next time, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.